Welcome to the Service 95 Book Club with me, Dua Lipa. Honestly, reading has been an anchor through every phase of my life, and this book club is a way of sharing that joy. Every month, I'll spotlight a book I've loved and sit down with the author for an open and honest conversation about the themes, the characters, and the world they've created. And because I've had the pleasure of speaking with so many brilliant writers already, I'll be opening the archive and bringing back one gem each month. So pour a glass, grab your book, and let's get into it. Today, I'm talking to Percival Everett, the author of the iconic novel, The Trees. Percival's novel takes a series of gruesome murders of white men in Money, Mississippi, as a starting point to interrogate the history of lynching in the United States. Sounds like a grim read, right? Surprisingly, it's not. Percival has enormous fun subverting the tropes of police buddy shows to question notions of justice in a racist society. The book is classic Percival, wickedly funny, deeply affecting, and always one step ahead of your expectations. My chat with Percival coming up.
When I started the novel, I turned to my wife and said, I'm not being very fair to white people. And then I thought, well, screw that. The evil is perpetrated by racist America, and they need to own it.
Absolutely.
And so when white people write about slavery or something, they should.
Right.
They should, and they should struggle with it, and it should be a difficult subject. People find their truth in art. It's not complete until the reader comes to it. That's when meaning gets made.
Pinch Wayface, Red Jetty, Hickory Spit. I mean, everyone's got a joke name.
I have to say that was one of the few times I've had a lot of fun writing was the name. Pinch Wayface, I'm still quite proud of.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for joining me to talk about your novel, The Trees. I came across this book when I was invited to speak in 2022 at the Booker Prize.
I remember you.
I read the whole shortlist, and it was a very, very strong list that year, but your book really stood out to me.
Oh, thank you.
And I've kind of been obsessed with it ever since. And it deals with the history of lynchings in the US and also serves as a reminder that this practice continues today, just disguised in other forms. But I think it's really important to say that it's not a difficult read. And it's quite the opposite, actually, because it's quite laugh out loud funny as well. And it's drawn comparisons to Quentin Tarantino and Chester Himes. And even reading it feels kind of like a Coen Brothers movie or something. But I think it stands out very uniquely yours.
Oh, thank you.
So I've read a lot that you are enjoying a moment. Your 2001 novel, Erasure, was made into an Oscar-winning film called American Fiction, which I've seen and I also loved. And you were shortlisted twice for the Booker Prize with The Trees and James. And in the past year, you won the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize for James. Are you enjoying it?
It doesn't change much. I have more readers, which is great. But I don't go online, so
Right.
So
That's a good thing, I think, for the most part.
I of course like the attention to the work, but as wonderful as awards are, it would be nice to win one every week. But it doesn't change the work. The work is what it is.
Maybe you feel like if you win an award, then you feel some kind of other pressure to create something that maybe people will really like. But if you don't feel affected by that, then you will always constantly, I feel like, continue to make things that you're proud of and things that you want to, write and express. It doesn't quite change how you feel just because of critical acclaim.
Yeah, I think that's right. It'd be great to write a novel that everyone hated.
How so? Why?
If everyone hated it, what kind of power would that be? That would be fantastic. Maybe they'll like the next one, but upset everyone.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see what the next one's saying.
I keep trying.
I've heard that you don't really enjoy talking about your books, but I'm afraid that's what we're here for.
Okay.
So I thought, how about I tell you what I think it's about?
That's all that matters.
You tell me if I've hit the mark.
Okay, we can play this game, but I have to say that whatever a reader sees is there.
Well, I guess it belongs to the reader, I guess, at some point once it's out, right?
Yes, that's exactly.
Well, for me, it's kind of a fantasy of restorative justice, not just for Black people who have suffered lynching and racist violence for so long, but also for Native people and Chinese immigrants and many others. And I felt that by the end that you were really inverting the origins of the United States to show that it's built on genocide as much as any kind of dream of freedom. But you do it in a way that's so hilarious and engaging, and it allows, I don't know, a way to talk about such a dark subject. Okay, that was my summary.
Well, I like it. I'll take that.
One of the central characters of the book, even though he doesn't get a single line and is long dead, is Emmett Till. For any of our younger listeners who might not have heard this story, can you tell us what happened to him?
Emmett Till was, I believe, 13 years old in 1955 when he was visiting relatives. He was from Chicago and visiting relatives in Money, Mississippi. And he was accused of whistling or saying something to a white woman in a store. You must know that the young man had a stutter, and one of his ways of dealing with the stutter was to whistle occasionally. Regardless, he was accused of this, an accusation that was later recanted by Carolyn Bryant, at whom he supposedly whistled. And he was subsequently tortured, murdered, and tossed into the Tallahatchie River. He was beaten so badly that he was unrecognizable as a person. And this is the true story of courage. It was from his mother, who refused, even at the government's behest, she refused to close the casket at his funeral, stating that the world should see what racist America had done to her child. So that stands as an iconic instance of something that was a daily fear for Black Americans for so long.
I would love to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, because of course he is such a massive center point of the story. But I thought maybe you could do a short reading for us, maybe starting with the opening pages, which set the tone of the book.
Now, I have to apologize for one thing, and that is that I suffer from what we in my house call work amnesia. As soon as I'm done with a book, I forget it. And whenever I look at it, I think, who wrote this?
Really?
Every time. Whether it's years ago, as in with this book. And you have to remember, this is now 3 books ago.
Yeah, of course.
But I'll do my best. I hope I like it still.
Give us a little refresher.
Okay. Money, Mississippi looks exactly like it sounds. Named in that persistent Southern tradition of irony and with that attendant tradition of nescience, the name becomes slightly sad, a marker of self-conscious ignorance that might as well be embraced because, well, let's face it, it's not going away. Just outside Money, there was what might have been loosely considered a suburb, perhaps even called a neighborhood, a not-so-small connection of vinyl-sided split-level ranch and shotgun houses called, unofficially, Small Change. In one of the dying grass backyards, around the fraying edges of an empty above-ground pool, one adorned with faded mermaids, a small family gathering was happening. The gathering was neither festive nor special, but usual. It was the home of Wheat Bryant and his wife, Charlene. Wheat was between jobs. He was constantly, always between jobs. Charlene was always quick to point out that the word between usually suggested something at either end, 2 somethings, or destinations, and that Wheat had held only one job his whole life, so he wasn't between anything. Charlene worked as a receptionist at the Money Tractor Exchange, J. Edgar Price Proprietor, the official business name, no commas, for both sales and service, though the business had not exchanged many tractors of late, or even repaired many. Times were hard around the town of Money. Charlene always wore a yellow halter top, the same color as her dyed and poofed hair. And she did this because it made Wheat angry. Wheat chain drank cans of Falstaff beer and chain smoked Virginia Slim cigarettes, claiming to be one of those feminists because he did, telling his children that the drinks were necessary to keep his big belly properly inflated, and the smokes were important to his bowel regularity. When outside, Wheat's mother, Granny Carolyn or Granny C, wheeled herself about in one of those wide, tired electric buggies from Sam's Club. It was not simply like the buggies from Sam's Club. It was, in fact, permanently borrowed from the Sam's Club down in Greenwood. It was red and had white letters that spelled out Amsclew. The hard-working electric motor emitted a constant, loud whir that made conversation with the old woman more than a bit of a challenge. Granny C always looked a little sad, and why not? Wheat was her son. Charlene hated the woman nearly as much as she hated Wheat, but never showed it. She was an old woman, and in the South, you respect your elders. Her 4 grandchildren, 3 years to 10, looked nothing like each other, but couldn't possibly have belonged to anywhere else or to anyone else. They called their father by his first name, and they called their mother Hot Mama Yeller, the CB handle she used when she chatted with truckers late at night after the family was asleep, and occasionally while she cooked. That CB chatter made Wheat angry, partly because it reminded him of the one job he'd had, driving a semi-trailer truck full of fruits and vegetables for the Piggly Wiggly chain of grocery markets. He lost that job when he fell asleep and drove his truck off the Tallahatchie Bridge. Not completely off, as the cab dangled over the little Tallahatchie River for many hours before he was rescued. He was saved by climbing into the bucket of the excavator brought over from LaFleur. He might have actually held that job had the truck not held on, had simply and quickly plunged immediately and anticlimactically off the bridge and into the muddy river below. But as it happened, there was ample time for the story to blow up and show up on CNN and Fox and YouTube, repeated every 12 minutes and going viral. The killing image was the clip of some 40 empty cans of Falstaff beer spilling from the cab and raining into the current below. Even that might not have been so bad had he not been clutching a can in his fat fist as he climbed through the teeth of the excavator bucket.
Thank you so much. That was great. Now that you've refreshed your memory a bit, do you rate it?
Oh, that book, yeah.
Okay, so we've established that we're in Money, Mississippi, and the family that we have just met are the Bryants. It's clear from the start that the Bryants are buffoons, and I think almost exclusively your white characters are buffoons, including the local cops, and they're all racists, which is in obvious contrast to your black cops, Ed Morgan and Jim Davis, who are witty and smart and affable. And I just think it's brilliant as we're all in on the joke. Safe to say, the Bryants are not lovable characters, just as well as most of them are not around for very long. You know, first Granny C's nephew, Junior is found dead with his head bashed in, barbed wire wrapped around his neck. Next is her son Wheat, who's also dead, well, found dead in a very similarly grotesque scene. What also unites these two murders is that the same corpse is present at both. You know, a long dead small black man, his face horribly beaten, with scars around his neck, and he bears a very uncanny resemblance to Emmett Till. And in his hand, he holds the testicles of the dead white man. You have a lot of fun with the local cops trying to figure out how a dead black man has murdered a very recently alive white one. Why is this recurring scene so central to your story?
Well, that's the somewhat supernatural element to it. The body disappears and reappears. It's the ghost that should haunt America. And as we talk about the novel, you can see why irony has to play into my creation of the novel. Is as soon as we start talking about it, there's no way for it to be funny. Yeah, and there's no way for us to open it up to someone and have them think anything but sadness. And when people start on your side, it's just preaching to the choir. So the humor is necessary to open up a world that allows people to ask questions. When I started the novel, I turned to my wife and said, I'm not being very fair to white people. And then I thought, well, screw that. I was raised in American popular culture, and the stereotypes of black people are repetitive and pernicious and insidious and just awful. And I thought, well, that's the real subject for me in this novel is how does it feel to have these images thrust on you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think introducing Emmett Till is really clever and very brave, and something that needs to be remembered for many years. The image of his mutilated body is one of the most horrific and most famous pictures of the 20th century. Placing him in what could be a fantastical scene makes it real. The barbed wire, the beating, the mutilation, that all happened to him, but it isn't really him, is it?
No. In the same way that once that horrific thing was done to Emmett Till, he ceased to be Emmett Till and became something much larger.
And the cutting off of the testicles of the sons of the white racist murderers, is that the ultimate restorative justice, given that lynchings was so often justified with white paranoia about black men threatening white women?
Well, that was a torture that was frequently perpetrated on the victims of lynching as an expression of that fear of black masculinity among white men.
Let's talk about Ed Morgan and Jim Davis. They are competent black cops sent down from the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, the MBI, which does actually exist. I have Googled it.
Ironically, yes.
And Ed and Jim are there as backup to the incompetent, you've guessed it, racist local white cops, Delroy Digby and Braden Brady. And this is such a familiar trope. The big city investigators coming in and annoying the local cops by taking over a crime scene. But I don't think it's ever been inverted with this race element in the way you do. Tell me why you chose this setup.
Well, again, it's just turning everything around. The black expertise showing up. We're bombarded with the white savior, and even now in movies.
Yeah.
And there's no lack of these images, and that's something that's hard for the West and white people to shake.
In so many ways, I think the inversion of stereotypes is important, and it's also very fun in the sense that there's some very hilariously improbable names of characters in your book, and there's Ho and Chi and Min and Her Behind and Helvetica Quip and Junior and Reverend Cadfondle, Pinch Wayface, Red Jetty, Hickory Spit. I mean, everyone's got a joke name except for Ed and Jim. Did you have fun making all these names?
I have to say that was one of the few times I've had a lot of fun writing was the name. Pinch Wayface, I'm still quite proud of.
I was going to ask what was your favorite one. I think mine's Hickory Spit. Like I like to think that when he keels over, he actually died of his racism. I thought even the acronyms were brilliant. My favorite was PALE.
I don't remember. What is PALE?
PALE is like the People's Agency for Law Enforcement. Maybe this is the time to talk about Mama Z and the role she plays in the story. What can you tell us about her?
She's an extremely old woman. She's well over 100. Her father was lynched when she was a child, and her obsession with that crime has led her in her life to document all lynchings in the U.S. since that time. And so she has some 5,000 dossiers in a room in file cabinets. My estimate of 5,000, I think, might be a conservative estimate. I suspect there are more. How many do we not know about?
That was the bit about her father that really shocked me. And Mama Z says less than 1% of lynchers were ever convicted of a crime. Only a fraction of those ever served a sentence. A footnote to the case of her own murdered father, it remarks, no one was interviewed, no suspects were identified, no one was arrested, no one was charged, no one cared. I mean, it's chilling. It's chilling, isn't it?
Yes.
Gertrude, also known as Dixie, and who claims to be Mama Z's grandchild, she brings an academic, Damon Nathan Thruff, to work with Mama Z on her archive. And I love her comment to him about the book that he wrote about racial violence. She goes, it's very scholastic. It's like all his academic work had somehow been missing the horror right?
Yes.
And there's a scene where we see Damon writing out a list of names of all of those killed by lynchers. And he says, when I write these names, they become real, not just statistics. When I write these names, they become real again. And you dedicate a whole chapter to these names. And it's actually the longest chapter in the book. And it includes the names of Chinese, Italian, and Latino victims of lynching. And I understand that every name is real. And I wonder if this is your own act of remembrance.
I actually did what Damon Thruff does in the novel. I wrote all the names out by hand. And it was a meaningful experience. I was moved by it, chilled by it, and realized as I was doing it that I've been writing for a long time, and I never would have been able to come up with that many names. The most chilling part of the list are the unknown victims, unknown male, unknown female. The first printing of the novel, there is a man, David Walker, in the list. His name is followed by David Walker's wife and David Walker's 4 children. And a woman in Tennessee wrote to me to give me the name of David Walker's wife that I hadn't been able to find. And in subsequent printings, the book now reads David Walker, Annie Walker, David and Annie Walker's 4 children. And I still get chills when I think of having gained that information because of the novel itself.
The listing of the names for me really made me think of say their name, the phrase that has also been used more recently to bring attention to race crimes, including police brutality. I'm going to come back to the book, but I also wanted to ask you about your visual art.
Oh, okay.
You're a very accomplished painter, and you created a series of paintings called Once Seen that serves as a companion piece to the trees. Which came first, the paintings or the book?
Oh, the novel came first.
Okay.
I painted before I wrote, but when I finished the novel, I realized that I wasn't done with the subject.
What can you tell us about these pieces?
They're all the same size. They're works on paper. There are a couple of large canvases that go with the show, but for the most part, they're all works on paper that are abstract. The title of the show is Once Seen, and what happens is once you see what one of them is about, it's impossible to see them as anything else, all of them. And that's my statement about the power of the importance of that crime. To take that away, a life away from someone in that way with this mob mentality, this belief in your sanctioned right to do so. It's the worst theft. You're not only taking a life,
Absolutely.
You're taking something from everyone. You know, and just to about visual art and about paintings, and I'm sorry I can't recall the name of the woman who made the painting. She received a lot of criticism. A woman made a painting of Emmett Till, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 15, a portrait of Till post-crime after his lynching. And why should it be a pleasant painting to observe, to look at? It's not, and maybe it's not a great painting. I have never seen it in person. But the flack she received was because she was a white woman making this painting. That was really unfair. Lynching is more the history of white people in America than it is black people. The evil is perpetrated by racist America, and they need to own it.
No, absolutely.
And so when white people write about slavery or something, they should.
Right.
They should, and they should struggle with it, and it should be a difficult subject, and there's nothing wrong with all of us revisiting the awful past of this nation.
Absolutely. I'm interested for you, how the experience of painting lynching victims rather than writing about them differed for you. You said that you painted because you weren't done with the subject. Was painting cathartic for you?
I think it probably was. I'm not smart enough to see that when it happens. Painting is far more emotional and visceral to me than writing. Writing is this intellectual process. You live with the research and the writing for a couple of years and become thoroughly sick of it. And and it's necessarily work that's done internally. The painting, there's a physicality to it. There's an outward expression. There's a standing away from it, even when you're working it through. And so it can be a less intellectual and a lot more emotional. And so that was important to me, to not have my experience with such a profound subject be purely intellectual.
I was wondering if you could do a final reading for us.
Certainly.
This is towards the end of this book.
Ed described the scene on the highway as it had been described to him by Jim and by the captain. Special Agent Hine sat across the table and rubbed her temples as she listened. They were seated in the back of the Capriccio grill in the Peabody. Dr. Quip put down her fork and pushed away her plate of scrambled eggs, pancakes, sausages, and bacon. I'm no longer hungry. Sorry, Ed said. Work. There was something really strange going on, Jim said. I realize that's really obvious, but I mean something really, really strange. Just south of Bunny, Ed said. That's where it happened. The whole works, Jim said. Severed testicles and everything. Solitary black victim with challenged fashion sense. See what I mean? Everything the same, all over the place. Chicago, Mississippi, California. They sat quietly for a moment. I guess we'll miss the ducks, Quip said. Ducks is a reference to the ducks at the Peabody Hotel who walk in and out.
Okay.
I read that real ducks live here in the penthouse. They walk them over at 11 to the fountain. They ride down in the elevator just like people. I was hoping to see them. Maybe next time, Jim said. Mama Z, Hines said. What about her? Jim asked. There's something going on there, she said. She's connected to something. I can just feel it. Like what? Jim asked. She's 100 years old, over 100 years old. I know. I think Herbie's right, Ed said. Something's not right. Okay, I will admit that the black power scarf is a bit much. I'll say it again, Jim said. The woman is 100 years old. She's old and she's cagey and she's a bit of a smartass, but hell, she's earned it. And that thing she wears, just being red, black, and green, doesn't make it a black power scarf. Ed stared at Jim and raised his eyebrows. Okay, it's a black power scarf. So what? There's more, Hines said. What? Asked Quip. She's too smart? I've never heard of that as a problem, Jim said. It's not a problem, Hines said. It's an observation. Did you see the records? Ed asked. The what? The room full of the files, Jim said. No, what are you talking about? Ed put his napkin on the table and leaned slightly back. That old woman has, in her house, cabinets full of dossiers of nearly every lynching victim in the United States history. She didn't mention this to me. I'm surprised, Jim said. She seemed proud of it. Proud is not the right word. It was obviously a lot of work. Well, we better get rolling, Ed said. There's not going to be anything left of that scene on the highway, but we need to see the bodies. Before the locals lose them, Jim said. Sorry about the ducks, Doc. There'll be more ducks, Quip said. A sentence I never imagined myself saying. Nevertheless, Jim said, true. Ed drove. He did not deliver them directly to the freeway that led out of Memphis. Instead, he took a circuitous route through the rundown city. Sorry about taking the long way, he said. It's just that every time I'm in Memphis, I have to drive by one place and not get out, but just pause and look. Graceland, Hines said and chuckled. I've been there too, but no, Ed said. Here we are, the Lorraine Motel. There on that corner of that balcony, I was 10. That's why I'm a cop. It's a museum now, Jim said. And it shouldn't be, Ed said. Why not? Quip asked. It's just a motel. That's what it is. That's all it is, Ed said. People should rent out that very room and sleep in it, in that very bed, and step through that very door and stand on that balcony and realize what happened there. People should know, understand, that not all Thursdays are the same. Come on, Ed. Let's go, Jim said.
Thank you so much. It's an absolutely brilliant book and smart on so many levels. And I'd actually like to finish by going back to something that you said earlier about the role of the reader with a book like this. I've heard you say that it's not writing that you consider subversive, it's reading.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as a writer, I may well have something that I mean, something that I think I'm saying. But the art itself does the work in the world. It's not complete until the reader comes to it. That's when meaning gets made, gets constructed. People find their truth in art, whether it's music or painting or literature. They bring their world to the work and find what they need. They're not trying to figure out, and they shouldn't be trying to figure out, what I meant. One should never appeal to an artist about any truth or wisdom in the world. We're facilitators. Mm. And when the audience comes to it, that's when the magic happens. And that's when everything important happens. And so when people read, they're thinking. As an artist, the idea that anyone starts thinking because of something I've done is what thrills me. It's not important to me that they think what I think. I just want to live in a world where people think.
I love that. I love that. And then I guess by extension then, to be really subversive, you should join a book club, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. The only thing better than people immersing themselves is talking about it with each other.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Percival, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that everybody listening picks up a copy of The Trees if they haven't already, as well as your many other books. There's a lot to choose from.
Thank you for the attention.
Of course. And we've put together some suggestions of where to start with your work. You've also very kindly given us a playlist and a reading list of writers that we should check out. And there's also some examples of your visual art, which is really impressive.
No, wonderful. Thank you.
And all of this can be found on service95.com and our socials, alongside extra content related to themes explored in The Trees. Anyone who signs up for the free Service 95 Book Club newsletter will be the first to hear about my next monthly read, and you'll also get all this exclusive content in a monthly roundup. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Service 95 Book Club for more book recommendations and author interviews. Percival, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Along with my new monthly reads, I'll also be sharing a conversation from the archive, some of my favorite chats with the world's best writers over the past couple of years. Trust me, you won't want to miss them. Make sure you're following the Service 95 Book Club podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you love this one, why not leave us a review? Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.